Gotta elevate through the challenges. Might bend, but baby, you won't break. It's okay to make all your mistakes.
Welcome to another episode of Dare to Evolve, a sanctuary for genuine conversations and heartfelt dialogue. I am your host, Valerie Demezo. Just a reminder, this is a platform where it's a space that we create where stories unfold, hearts are open, and transformation begin. Here we invite guests to share their stories, share their journeys as raw, real, and reflective as possible. Today I have the honor of sitting with none other than Dr. Ivan Valerie. How are you?
Oh, Valerie, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You say it's an honor, but I feel like I am the one that is honored to be here with you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
And just so everyone knows, we're about to dive deep into a conversation on how to deal with trauma. A story of courage, healing, and evolution. So we're going to jump right into it. And my first question to you, of course, is just tell us a bit more about who's Dr. Ivan Valerie.
Oh, wow. I am the last of a few children. And they say the last children are always the one that, I don't know what to say, but yeah, I'm the last of my father's and mother's, my father and mother children. I was born in Dominica. I came here almost 22 years ago to St. Martin. I am married with one wife. That's important.
Very important.
So I'm married to one wife. Met my wife here on St. Martin. And together we have two beautiful daughters, Rebecca and Ariella. We are also the lead pastors of Faith and Works Ministries on the pond field on the Dutch side. So in a nutshell, Valerie, that is who I am. I am very passionate about helping people, though. Yes. I am very passionate about helping people. I am convinced that my purpose in life is to help people by teaching and dissecting and just having a conversation where it pertains to this just really and truly living out biblical principles. And once we can able to live them out, we will actually see the benefits or the manifestation of the promises that God have for us.
Well said. Now, today, as mentioned, we're going to be talking about how dealing with trauma.
Yes.
And trauma on a whole is something that a lot of people don't like to talk about. The first answer you get or the first response from anyone is always that, I'm fine. You know what? Nothing bothers me. I'm taking things every day, one day at a time. And at the end of the day, we realize it's a subject, it's a matter in our life that we don't like to tackle. Mm-hmm. So what defining moment in your journey actually brought you to say, you know what, trauma is something that we really have to deal with, because me myself is actually had a time, an encounter with that?
Oh, definitely. I think I can relate when you say that most people say I don't have trauma. I don't need any help from trauma. Because I was one of those persons. Growing up, I felt like, my life was just normal. What I went through was a normal part of life. But what trauma actually is anything that is not normal, that causes you to think of yourself differently. Any traumatic situation, it could be something that happened at one moment, or it could also be something that happened over a period of time. And so most times we look at traumatic experiences only like, let's say, an accident or a one-time incident, but somebody telling you constantly that you are not good enough or you are not pretty enough. And once that begins to shape your identity, that is a traumatic experience. But it's not just about the experience, Valerie. It's also about the impact of that experience. And so most persons think only about what the trauma was, but we also have to consider how it affected our identity, how it plays in the relationships that we have today, and also how it influences our daily life. And for me, a few things happened in my life that really had negative effects in these areas.
Before you do that, it's willfully that I'm stopping you here, because we use the word trauma. and you started saying what trauma is. Can we develop a little bit more on how do you identify that this is a trauma, or what is a trauma on a whole? Just so we all can understand and be on the same level.
Yes. So like I said, trauma is anything that is not normal and that has an impact on your life in a negative way. All right. So for instance, I'll give a clear example. I'm not ashamed to say it. I cannot swim.
High five. I can't swim either.
Somebody asked me once, they said, but you're living on an island, how can you and I said, well, if God intended for me to swim, and I'm not trying to be saying, well, if you're able to swim, I have an issue with that. I say, and that was my escape from the under. I said, if God intended for me to swim, he would have made me swim. But the reason why I cannot swim is not because I have a fear of water. I go to the beach, not my favorite place, but I go to the beach, I go in the water, I enjoy time with my family and friends and my fellowship, I enjoy time. But to understand that, you have to go back to my childhood. There was a time when it was a public holiday. I can't remember exactly what holiday it was, and the beach was full of people, and we were all on this jetty, and of course I couldn't swim then. And one of my friends just pushed me into the water. And when he pushed me in the water, there was another guy that came over in the area, in the busy water. The sea was busy. And for some reason, he came there with a boat, an outboard motor. And I was going down underneath the water. And when I looked up, right over my head, that blade passed spinning. And that was not a normal experience. And that affected me. And so even when I could have gotten the opportunity to learn to swim, I chose not to frequent the sea as much as I should back then.
You see why I love these kind of conversation? You're sitting there and I'm getting how to say these flashbacks, because when you say being at the beach and a public holiday is something, I went back to Easter, and you're right. So we're linking what trauma is.
Right.
So there and then you were traumatized.
Yeah, definitely.
What you saw and what you live. Now, I constantly let everyone know I can't swim. Now, I love to just go at the beach and chill. I love my sunset, sunrise around the beach and all of that. But I do have the fear of out in the water and, you can't touch and the whole 9 yards. And it just gave me flashes back to Easter, where my entire family, every Easter Monday, you sleep on the beach from the Sunday or the Saturday,
Right.
so you can get that spot on a Saturday, Sunday and a Monday. And we are going to Le Galion, for those who know Le Galion in French Quarter, one of the most shallow beach you can find. And we are all playing and we are all there, and boom, someone drowned right next to you.
Oh, wow.
And constantly that has been repeated. At the time, our family, we just stopped going to the beach around Easter time. So as you were speaking just now, that flash came to mind. The second thing that came to mind with that is, and again, I can't swim, but you can manage.
Yeah.
We swim out to the boat again. You call it pat boat up Galion. We swim out up there, and everyone knows you can't swim, but they constantly play. All of them jumped off the boat and left me to swim in. You understand? And here you have to come off. Now you jump in the water and trying to say you're going out, but you have that fear.
Yeah.
And I'm going down more than coming up. And last but not least, going to school again. What flashed when you were speaking? We used to go to Grand Cars on the bridge, that famous Le Pont de Grand Cas, that bridge. And the swimming teachers had the best way to teach you to swim. As soon as you reach on, poop, show you out in the water. That there and then, you see how fast I'm able to relate and show you from when I was traumatized.
Oh, wow.
Well, from then I was like, I can't swim. I'm not doing that.
And, it's important you said that, because most people believe that they do not have any trauma. Yeah. But trauma relates differently. And one of the things about trauma, how trauma actually affects us, is that our body responds by trying to protect us from what seemed to be a harmful experience that we encountered. And sometimes what it does, trying to protect us, it defragments the experience. And so, like for instance, you would have somebody that has a serious post-trauma syndrome, and then what would happen is during counseling or during while talking about it or hearing somebody else's story, that's when you have stuff like what they say flashback, and they begin to connect the stuff because the memory is defragmented, and now it becomes it becomes like pieces begin to emerge, and then you can realize, okay, oh wow, this thing really affected me. But most people really, like you said earlier on, believe that they do not have any trauma.
You said as well that trauma is something that impacts you negatively.
Yeah.
But I also believe that you might see it as negative, but what if the person themselves, for them, it's positive? Now, some people might not like what I'm going to say, but I'll take that as an example. We know a lot of people, and I've grew up in family or people around me that has been in abusive relationships. And they believe that in that abusive relationship, in that time, that they're the one that was faulted. So it's not something negative with them being beaten on for the simple fact because they're so in love, or they're blinded by this in love with someone. So the person show they express themselves through hitting them or abusing them
because they love me.
Because they love me. You know, they say quotation, but my mother from think it's like if you say a quotation, so that will say if you don't bang me, you don't love me. And you have that for now, until you can acknowledge that that's something negative, then you will not be able to receive it as a trauma. So how do you differentiate what is really that trauma that you need to face? And I tell my friends around me a lot, in order for an alcoholic to get help, he needs to admit he's an alcoholic. If I want to learn to swim, I have to first admit it deep down that it's beyond just fear, but I can swim, so I can get that help. How do you do that when the person themselves don't realize it's not a negative one?
So when we study trauma, we realize that there are three stages to a natural response of trauma, and the first stage is deny. So you have deny, and then you have where it is. Let me hold on. I get a little brain freeze there. Hold on. We can edit that afterwards. But the first one is deny, then we numb, and then we cry. There's 4 stages. So it's deny, numb, run, deny, cry, numb, and run.
Okay.
So it's deny, cry, numb, and run. And what happens in the stage of deny is that our brain is having an issue with with connecting what we are going through in that traumatic experience or traumatic situation, or you, based on your example, traumatic relationship, based on what we or where we see ourselves in the future. So what is happening is that, for instance, to get back to your example, a young lady that is in a relationship with a young man that is abusing her, her brain is not making a connection, because all she's seeing is what she wants in the future, which is a loving spouse. And so as far as she's concerned, her brain will convince her. And that is nothing to do with, oh, she's stupid. That's a natural psychological response. Her brain will tell her based on what she really wants.
In objective.
Sometimes she don't see the no because of what she see in the future. She have already painted a picture. She has convinced herself that this person is the person that she sees herself with in the future, regardless of what is happening now.
Yeah.
And that happens to all of us. Sometimes we have situations where we are, it may not be an abusive situation, but it's not what we want. But we convince ourselves that really and truly this is what I'm working towards, and so I keep on working at it. And so until we come to the place where we first and foremost realize that what we have now will never be what we want, then we begin to come out of the stage of denial. We come out of the stage of denial, and then we go to the other stages of natural response or trauma. But one of the things about coming out of that stage, Valerie, is when we begin to look at stuff not only from our perspective, because what happens is that we have this thing now where everybody is all about themselves, and I call it, we are in the era of selfishness. Everybody's all about themselves. I think is that, so I don't have nobody else. I live my life for me and all this stuff. And that was never God's intention for us. Never God's intention for us. And I keep on saying every single thing has a creator. My watch has a creator. This microphone was created by somebody. And the best person to tell you how to use that thing or what it should be used for, so it can be used for the most effective way, is the creator. And so if I have a purpose, because everything that was created for a purpose and with a purpose. If I have a purpose, the person that should tell me what my purpose
Is your
is
creator.
and tell me who and what exactly I am is the creator. And so what we have to do to come out of that denial stage is forget what we think about ourselves and begin to find out what he, the creator, thinks about us, what our purpose is, how we are to operate. And from the moment you begin to change your identity and take on the identity of God, how God think about you, you begin to realize and be able to quickly come out of that stage of denial. Because most times we are trying to make a life for ourselves based on our own perception, our own perspective. And that is when we remain in denial for a long period of time.
But you see, this takes actually growth. This takes actually a time of self-awareness decision that is taken by saying that, you know what, I'm at a point today where I let bygones be bygones. I chose my battles. I know my calling. I know my reason for doing this. And I know that there's a bigger reward, you know. But before that, there's a time in my life where there was doubts, where there is always something that was stopping you from advancing. So when I hear you speak, it's today, if we're here, because we took that bold step to say, you know what, we're not going to be just a part of the problem and just let the problem linger too long. We want to be part of the solution. So let's do the work on self so we can better transmit it and help others get over. But was there a time in your life where something traumatized, you know, because for me, it's very personal. And I repeat that as much as possible, because we talk about maybe someone in a abusive relationship. We spoke about swimming, but sometimes it's actually the relationship with a loved one, with a family member that impacts you way more than you can even imagine.
Oh wow, definitely. I had that this experience with a family member. For me, it was my father. You know, my father was always home. My father wasn't the father that was not home. He was there. My father was never he wasn't a wicked man. He loved his family. I believe he still does. But I had a lot of daddy issues growing up. It was so bad, Valerie, that one time I remember telling my mom and dad, I wish my father would hit her, so I would have an excuse to beat him.
Wow.
I despised my father growing up. And one of the reasons for that was because growing up, my father was never emotionally there for us. Everything was my mom. He provided. He went out. He worked. He provided, and that was basically it. All that being said, we also grew up in extreme, and I usually put it that way. We grew up in embarrassing poverty. It was bad. I mean, I remember times when my mom used to be scraping through the house, looking on the shelves, on the cupboards, on the chairs, everywhere, to find 80 cents EC, so we could go and buy a pound of brown sugar, so we could sweeten some water to have something to drink before we go to bed.
Wow.
You know? And for some reason, I thought that our financial situation was totally my father's fault. And so that added to all the lack of emotion and everything that was there.
But for you, what would have changed in that moment? Because you said that he was present, he provided, he did the best he can. He was not a bad father. However, emotionally not attached. So what in that moment would have made you see your father on like a complete package?
In that moment,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest with you, it would be a change, a drastic change in our finances. And the reason for that is because at that time, that was the thing that was affecting me the most. All of the friends, my other friends had this, they had toys, they grew up with this. I used to play with the toys, I was around them, but it was embarrassing not to have. What I got was, like I said, I was the last child. Most what I got was hand-me-downs, My parents, they love me. I had no doubt that they love me. But 3 years consecutively, 3 years consecutively, my parents promised me to buy me a bicycle. They said, Ivan, if you get the highest grade in the entire school, I'm going to give you a bicycle. And for 3 years consecutively, I got the highest grade in that school. And up till now, I have not received that bicycle. And I remember that for years, that affected me for years. And it wasn't until I became an adult, I realized that it was not their fault. They really wanted to do it, but not their fault. But the reason why it affected me, because I'm not a materialistic person, so I want to make it clear. The reason why it affected me was every other friend of mine had their bicycle. I could ride, but I had to wait to get a ride from somebody else. And growing up in an environment like this, it affects you. And like I see, sometimes you don't know it affects you. And so that all these things added to the lack of emotion. I couldn't talk to my father. I grew up with my father was very strict. Most times, if my mother had something to like to discipline me, her favorite word was like, "When your father come, I will tell him, and he will deal with you." So it was always like that. So he was the one carrying out the disciplines. He was the one not there. I blamed him for what I was struggling with. And he never told me I love me until I became an adult with my own children. I never heard my father say I love you as a child. I mean, now as an adult, I am seeing the ways that he showed it, but I never heard it.
You say in that time, because that really impacted, that really affected you as a child growing up.
Definitely.
And what were some of the maybe I mean, I hear it constantly as I speak to other people, and they will say most of the time they go back to, well, my parents, something is linked to my parents. Either my mom or my dad never got a chance to say I love you, not even got a chance, but it was not a part of them. And a time we were saying that maybe they themselves in that era, in that time of life, they from their parents as well were not that mushy as we will say, or emotionally attached, that their way of showing love, their way of showing love is actually showing by providing, go out there, pushing and being the hard person on you. So did you ever had a chance to actually sit down with your father and just have that conversation to let him know how much he have, or his behavior or his non-emotions has impacted your life?
No, I haven't. And part of the reason why I haven't is because I have seen a change in our relationship, definitely. My older brother actually have had the opportunity to have these conversations with him, and through time, if I call my father now and we get off the phone, we end by saying we love each other. That's what happened now. But my father now, he has a lot of health challenges, and one of them is his memory. And so if I call my father today and I say, hi, daddy, he would take a few moments to recognize me, but he wouldn't know. He wouldn't remember where I'm at, if I'm married, how many kids I have. It's like his memory is gone. And so to have a conversation like that with him, I think in the moment would just not really make sense, and would just be kind of like vindictive to just tell him, you hurt me when I was young, and he have no recollection of it.
But in the same time, you're taking, okay, he's saying I love you now, but for you, are you linking it to, okay, he really means he loved me because now I understand it's me speaking to, or in this condition where it's like we think we have forever, we think we'll be forever young, or we'll be forever around, so we wait until God knows when, for us to get that reaction, or give that reaction that is expected from us. Are you receiving that in the right way, or are you just saying that, like, yeah, I understand his condition, so I know automatically I would get that feeling? But does he know it's me he's speaking to, or is it my older brother, or is it sincere? Is it genuine? How do you feel?
I think it's sincere, and I receive it as being sincere, because before his memory got like, to that stage, we had a few discussions. I didn't explain like your question you asked to what
Yeah.
extent, but we had a few discussions and brought certain level of healing. But I really truly can say I love my father now, and that's important for me. I'll tell you why, Valerie, because there was a time in my life where I thought I love my father, but I could never say it. And then one night, I was able to really break free from that. And with tears, and I was sobbing, it was at church actually, with my pastor that's helping me and counseling me. I was crying and with tears and sobbing, and I'm trying to say the words, but my throat and my tongue wouldn't allow me, because of the experiences, that I have had and how it affected me. And when I broke free, I was able to say that. And the next day I called him and I told him I love him. And that was when I think the healing actually began. I'm talking about our relationship, not just me personally, our relationship. I'm sad to say his health deteriorated quickly after that, but I think it was necessary. And I conquered the privilege, though. I really conquered the privilege that this happened before. Because one of the things about trauma is, if it is not confronted, and you don't really, because trauma is useful. I'm gonna tap into that a while, but if you do not really get to use the trauma for the positive, it eats you up.
you know I'm listening to you, and this should not happen on on the podcast. I'm listening to you, and I'm like willfully trying my best to don't fully tap into what you're saying, because at the same time I'm here speaking to God, because I'm like, are you trying to tell me something? Because for a while now, every conversation that I have, it comes back to daddy issues. And a lot of people wouldn't know that about me, or even me myself, sometimes I don't even speak about it. But all that you mentioned, today I'm sitting here, the host, the founder of Dare to Evolve, a platform that is a sanctuary for heartfelt dialogues and the whole 9 yards, and you want raw conversation and you want to help people heal. And I keep telling everyone, me myself, I'm figuring it out. And this conversation of daddy issues keeps coming up. And here I am, knowing that I have my own challenges. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, yeah, I don't recall my dad ever telling me that he loves me.
Wow.
I don't recall ever actually having just this sit down, let's just laugh and have a conversation with my father. I don't recall at any given time, I think if we go down that line, it's gonna be a rough episode.
I'm saying let's
A rough
go.
episode. It is very hard,
Yes, it
and
is.
many of us have that struggle, and we don't realize how bad it is. And because I said you got to keep it personal, I'll keep it personal. Hearing you speak, I'm just questioning. Like, sometimes they didn't know how, but at the same time, I would constantly say I did not ask to be here. I have a mother and a father, and I really cannot tell you of one great moment. And it's sad to say, this year I'll be making 42, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'll be making 42. And I think more than ever, the daddy issues or the daddy conversations will come up. And that is something that are you taking that along with you as a female standpoint? Are you constantly maybe in a relationship that you're seeking? I don't like to hear you seeking a father in a relationship. A father, I can't see myself intimately in love with my father, that you will say sometime you're seeking that, that person in the person that
Right.
you're going to be intimate with in that sense. But could it be something that contributed to the person I am today, the person that sometimes can be closed off, the person sometimes that can maybe give the guys a whole run for their money, because, it's like, okay, don't come to me if it's crap.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, just hearing you speaking lately again, it just keep coming up. It just makes me realize that, yeah, the daddy issues are real, because cannot. And I love my dad. I think because he's my father, but I can't even tell you what's his favorite color. I can't even tell you what he loves to eat. I can't even tell you what he will be doing on a normal day. I'll just remember the good old days of me. I never lived with my dad, so that's another story as well. We never lived together. I saw my mom raise her 8 children on her own. She will always, always remind you that's your dad. So you have to say, you have to show that compassion. So I guess I was just formulated like that. That's my dad. You do have still call him Papa. I don't ever think I call him directly by his name. And you said something earlier as well when you said you wanted your dad to hit your mother so that you could have a reason to hit him back.
Yep.
And again, a lot of things triggers because I would long for that moment of a full confrontation so I can confront him. I have a twin. I have other siblings. My mom have 4 children with my dad. And, I would constantly want him to pick on one of them so that I can pick on he, so we can have that debate. And then here I am constantly saying that you're fine. But I just wanted to say that because it is something that I believe could as a true trauma in your life.
I want to just encourage you and let you know this, right? And whoever's listening that has trauma from the father or any trauma at all, I want to just encourage you. What happened was not your fault. You are not responsible for what your father did, for what your mother did, for what anybody did to you. Trauma happens, and most times it is not because of your fault. What trauma tells you is that you were supposed to change this. That's why I wanted to beat my father. You were supposed to change this. You should have done differently. But the truth of the matter is, you are not the one at play. And so what trauma does, it floods you with lies. You begin to blame yourself. How can a child blame herself for being sexually abused as a child? But we grow up blaming ourselves. Maybe if I wasn't so playful with my father-in-law or my uncle, maybe if I was a different child, my father or my mother would have loved me, But at that time, this is nothing. This is not this. And I've had to come to realize that this is not your fault. This is not on you. This is not on you. By the way, this is not on you. What your father did, how he related to you, the effect it had on you is not on you. And we have to come to the place where we let that go. Let that go. And as soon as we do that, we begin to walk into our healing. And healing takes time. Healing takes time. We begin to walk in our healing. But the first step is to realize that it is not your fault. This is not because, and you don't deserve this. None of us deserved what we go through. You see, trauma stems from the heart of man who is desperately wicked. That's where it stems from. And at the end of the day, when those things happen, I had an experience with my that one's gonna be deep. An experience with my mom once. It was my mom, my brother, and myself. And I remember we were downstairs in the house and we were talking, and my mom began to break down. And I think that is one of the when I began to really realize how emotionally damaged I was and where it stemmed from my father. And my bigger brother just began to cry. I mean, they were crying. I made them talking. I didn't. I was much younger, and they were crying and with each other and everything. And he was the one that began to say, he don't never tell us he love us and what have you not, and so and so and so and so. And I was so hurt, but my pain stemmed from my mother's reaction. My pain stemmed from my mother's reaction. Because if you touch my mother, you touch my heart.
Yeah.
And so for the moment that happened, all blame again goes to my father.
Yeah.
And it's something I see all over. I see all over.
I know that this will be a topic Definitely your next time because, like I said, it keeps coming up. It keeps coming up, and you reach to a point where, like you say, you let go.
Yeah.
For me to be here today doing this platform and all of that, I reached to a point where I took that time to sit in my pain. I took that time to sit in my truth. I took that time to actually just let anything that has affected my life, let me confront it. Let me confront it. So I hear you and I understand. And there is something deeper, something more we need to go. So even sometimes when we acknowledge that it's not your fault, because I don't feel responsible. That's why I can constantly say that I didn't ask to be here. You know, I'm the child. You're the father. You're the
definitely.
adult. So your reaction should be different. You know, you should do the work. And you say, you know what? I'm good. I'm content with the fact that that's who you are, and I'm gonna move. I love you. I will always respect you, but there's boundaries as well. So I stop. But once it keeps coming back up, that's why I asked you if there was a time you were able to face that, really have that conversation, because I believe that is fundamental. Because it's like, as much as I'm gonna be like, I'm okay, I'm moving on. I understand that's who you are. I respect that. I respect you. But I know I would not let you get too closer again. I would not let you do that. However, at a given time, it just flashes. So I remember you and I speaking, and you talked about, you know, this journey that you're going to present, this journey that you're going to be on, which is the trauma detox.
Yeah.
And this is why, like I said, when we started speaking about trauma, it is important that we identify, or we understand first and foremost what we consider trauma.
Yeah.
And then once we identify that, how do we work on it? And I'm going to let you explain the trauma detox, and how did you get here? What brought you to this? And what are the various stages? And we're going to take it step by step.
Yeah. So the trauma detox is from my studies on trauma and my own experience, I came to realize that what trauma does is it releases toxins into every aspect of our lives, into our physical lives. Sometimes we get physically sick based on the stress and how it relates to us. Also in our spiritual lives as well. And so there is definitely a need for a trauma detox. All of us need to have a trauma detox. But what I came to realize, there are three major stages in this trauma detox. The first one is to really and truly identify your traumas. And that actually means recognizing that you have been scarred. Recognizing that you have been scarred, and not just being scarred and saying, oh, well, I got hurt and that is life. Because the truth of the matter is, most of us, we are ashamed of our scars. And we sometimes, like I talked about earlier on, our default response to being scarred is denial. And so we have got to really and truly confront our scars. And then the next one is to heal from these scars. But like you mentioned earlier on, Valerie, trauma can have good. And so the third stage is to bloom, is to thrive and flourish. Yes, I went through this, but now I am better because I went through this. And now I can help others go through their own journey because I went through this.
So when you say with the trauma detox, and we're going to stick on the first part, that is scars.
Yeah.
Okay. Meaning that you're able to identify that this is a problem.
Yes.
This is an issue. And you're able to reflect on it.
Yeah.
Is it down that line?
Yes, definitely. So what happens with our body when we go through a traumatic situation is that our body remembers. Our body remembers. Sometimes you could be in a grocery store and you could be shopping and a particular song come on, and all of a sudden your chest tightens. You begin to react differently. You get your body, your stomach begins to whatever. Or somebody passed by and they were in a particular perfume, and because your body remembers, and these are called triggers. And so as you identify your triggers, then you begin to identify what traumatic situation actually affected you. You know, and so triggers are very important. And also now your trauma is your body telling you you are in danger. So then sometimes you react in a kind of like a defensive state because you think your body is in danger. And so in the other section, the other part of that detox, when I talk about Mended, we learn some grounding, coping mechanisms, grounding techniques.
But stay right there and Scar 2 seconds, because what is good with what you're saying is that once you identify it, and this is why we create these platforms, and I'm grateful that you're here to share as well, it is important that we, like you say, don't see yourself as a victim, come to terms with what is and stop being ashamed of what it is. Someone is living that same thing or even worse. And some people just choose to be quiet because they're ashamed. And the life in which we're living today, which is more social media, people are more ashamed of that social media part of, or someone else seeing and learning or hearing, not even learning, have something to say about you when you expose that scar. However, the biggest part that we're missing is that these platforms are being able to have a solid surround circle that allows you to share, and you will realize that others practically went through the same thing or even something worse, and they're able to heal and they're able to open up. So in that nutshell means that when you have that scar and you're able to identify it and you're not ashamed of it, you speak about it, I can relate. I can say, you know what, you're not alone. And now we can tackle it. We can exchange, which create more of a platform or else a society of healing than a society of judging. And then we go to the Mended.
And you know, one of the things that I want to talk about scars before we go to Mended is that your scars are not anything to be ashamed of. Actually, your scars are proof that you survive, and they also are marks of your strength. And that's something that's powerful for us to understand. And then we go to Mended. And in Mended, that is where we try our best to restore and rebuild what was broken. You know, there's a I can't remember the name. I think it's Japanese, where they would take broken mugs or cups, and they would use gold and they would mend it back together. And that is the most beautiful piece of artwork you could find. You know, it's much stronger than it was originally. It's beautiful. It's wonderful to look at, and that is what our life can be when we are mended. When we are mended, that's what our life can be. And so we identify our scars in scarred, and now we are mending, we are healing. But how do we heal? We heal by, first of all, knowing what our triggers are and listening to the triggers, what they are saying, not what our body is telling us that we're in danger. So we look at grounding techniques, we look at developing different routines, because what has happened to our body for the time that we don't know that we are being dealing with trauma, we begin to do what? Protect ourselves. We create habits, we create certain characteristics. And then now we have to do what? We have to reframe those things. We have to change them because they are not what we need to have so we can heal. And so the person that can no longer watch their father because they have unforgiveness, you begin to work on that in Mended. And then from Mended, now you go to Bloom, where you just thrive and flourish, where you said, okay, now that I have mended, where else can I take this thing? I can use this. I can stay mended and say, okay, I'm healed, so I'm good. But then now you have no purpose for which you had this trauma. So now you can use it, like you were saying, to go and really help somebody else and become better than you ever was, even before you had trauma. And that is what I discovered with the Trauma Detox. And I have written 3 books. They are available today. So one is called the first one is called Scarred. The second one Mended, and the last one Bloom.
What I want to say on that before I give you, when we're speaking, time passed so fast.
Yes.
I tell anyone, when you're going to do something, do it fully. Go through that journey. Live that journey. Go through that experience. If you're going to invest in yourself and you're going to say, hey, you know what? It's just like health-wise. Everyone want to lose weight. They're going to say, okay, they went and they pay X amount of money to get a whole nutritionist to follow them, give them the meal, give them the whole 9 yards, and paying X amount of money a month for training. And they do it half the way. Maybe I'm talking about myself. You do it half the way. Half the way, you never do it fully. You're not fully investing in yourself and you can't see results. So with this package you gave, and it really touched me a lot, it's like when you talk about a trauma detox, It's such an alignment with you working on yourself.
Definitely.
Investing in yourself is the biggest and the most expensive gift that you can give to yourself. And so what I'm saying here is that if you're gonna decide that you want to do that and you want to do the trauma detox, do it fully. Don't start with just studying or reading
Yeah.
scars at 1st and then forget and go into bloom.
Yeah.
And no, you have to trust the process and understand that that process is forming and shaping you and molding you to become the person that you're gonna be.
You know, quickly, you said that, and even in the book self, I recommend not just reading the book and jump into the next one. You know, take time and read it over again, and also to actually take your time with it. Take your time to go through it systematically.
Yeah.
Work on you, because that's what it's all about. It's not about reading a book and then you say you finish.
No,
That's-
if you're gonna take any book or any journey you go on, if you're gonna do so, it has to be for you. And like I said, the best gift you can give yourself is investing in yourself. So if you're gonna do that, or you're gonna follow anything of encouragement or motivation and so forth, don't do it half the way. And don't only take the good part that you feel that you can identify yourself.
That's
with.
right.
Take the bad part as well.
right.
Take the one that are telling you, okay, you are enough and we're happy to say so, but you're too much. Take that part as well.
That's right.
So at this point in your life, I love asking my guests this question. This time of your life, what are you daring to evolve?
Oh. At this point in my life, I am daring to evolve to freedom.
Wow.
To freedom. In every area of my life, to freedom. I think that it's important. Freedom spiritually, freedom financially, freedom mentally, freedom health-wise. And that has a lot to do with just really and truly healing and mending and blooming from trauma.
Freedom. I never thought about that like that. Freedom. I do hope that today's conversation was as fruitful and impactful and meant something to you. I do hope that you all continue to understand the meaning and the importance of investing in oneself. Daring to evolve is a constant work. We are constantly evolving. No matter how high we feel we get sometime, trust me, daring yourself to evolve will only help you become a better version of yourself. So I'm leaving you with that question. What are you daring to evolve? Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank you
this
for having me,
opportunity.
Valerie.
This was a pleasure. Thank you.